Leicester Till I Die podcasts on the Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google, Anchor, and all podcast platforms.
You are watching Leicester Till I Die TV with Chris and Chumps. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. All you need for everything Leicester City FC. It's Leicester Till I Die TV.
Strap yourself in,
because we're set up, switched on, and ready to go.
Hi everybody, Jerry Taggart here. Now be sure to watch Chris and Leicester Till I Die TV by subscribing on YouTube and following them on social media for all the latest Leicester City news and information. Come on you foxes!
Good evening, fellow Fox fans. I'm back. And my ex-wife said I couldn't do it twice a night. Oh, if only she knew. Yes, fresh from the Opposition View show earlier, and thanks again to Emilio from Fulham. He didn't gloat too much for the show earlier. We'd got it planned. It's the transfer show special. It's deadline day today. Colour coordinated here. Do you like the outfit? Yes, just arrived today. I thought I'd wear my yellow tie again, and I thought, you know what? Might be a bit too much. I'll just go for the yellow in the stripes for the special. But like nothing's gone on. It's been so quiet. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen later on tonight. This is what you're watching.
You are watching Leicester Till I Die TV.
and it's live.
It is. So we've got some guests coming in, subject to them still being available. Hopefully we'll have Matthew Mann, who is knows all things about Leicester City. Ex-players Julian Watts and Paul Reid, back from the 80s and 90s. Owynn Palmer-Atkin, hopefully we'll try and get him on from BBC Radio Leicester. And Barrie Pierpoint, the chief executive from the 1990s, who took us through being a PLC and helped fund didn't build the Carling stand. He helped fund the building of the Carling stand. Just to basically get us through what I think is going to be a very, very quiet night. This is Leicester Till I Die. We are live on YouTube, Leicester Till I Die TV. We are on Facebook, the group, Leicester Till I Die, the group. And we are on Twitter and Periscope at Leicester TID. And please, if you are watching on YouTube, give that subscribe button a little bit of a click, follow us, and you can never miss any of our shows again. So subscribe on YouTube. It's Leicester Till I Die TV. It's going to be a long night, and we are going to get through it somehow. Got my drink, and no, it isn't a pint of vodka, but I think I might need one. It's all a bit deja vu, isn't it? Weren't we here this time last year and nothing happened much? And here we are again. Last year, I actually blamed the fact that we didn't do anything in this transfer window as the reason we didn't get Champions League. We've been calling out for a striker. You know we need a striker. I know we need a striker. Brad, I'm sure, will agree we need a striker. And he's going for midfielders who are, to be honest with you, no better than the guy that we were going to be loaning out. So we're going to loan somebody in from a championship club and then loan out a midfielder with Premier League experience. Tell me, what is the logic of that? Love Brendan. He's made some good signings. He's made some iffy signings in his time, but loaning a player that's worse than what we've already got and what we potentially will be loaning out to Newcastle. It's Ryan Bennett Mark II, isn't it? Let's ask Brad. It is Ryan Bennett Mark II, isn't it?
You know,
Good evening, Brad.
I've done a bit. I've done a bit. Good evening, first of all, Chris, and good evening, everybody who's watching. I've done a bit of research on it. I say a bit. I've not done a great deal, but I've done some research into his comments, and I don't know. I think maybe because Leicester have the injury to Vardy, which is the obvious thing, and because he has previously spoken that they were out and out looking for a replacement for Pratt. Well, not replacement, obviously, but a cover for Pratt while he's injured for pretty much the season, probably by the time he gets back onto the training ground pitch, and depending on the way the first team are performing at that point, he might not even feature again this season. We don't know. But, I think this is something that the media are very clever at doing, and they might, when a club's expecting to at least make one signing, but they've not done anything all window or shown any signs of it all window, and they want to try and maybe throw a speculation of a talent or a talent once before when he was a bit younger, and try and make it a mountain out of a molehill. Because Rodgers did come out and say, yeah, I worked with him at Watford, but I worked with a lot of players that are good at. I didn't hear too much of an actual clear indication of Rodgers basically saying the option they were going for, our survey says, was Nathaniel Chablo. I can't pronounce his name.
I'm just gonna put you on hold here because there is some breaking news coming, and it isn't unfortunately about Leicester, but it kind of hurts me to say this after what I just said in the introduction there. But Bournemouth have verbally agreed a deal with both Everton and Fulham for striker Joshua King. If Fulham are going for Joshua King, and I know it's a different transfer scenario we are in. Our owners in the tourism industry, and the tourism industry is bad at the moment. Obviously, it's non-existent. But if Fulham can go in for Joshua King, surely we can't rely on Perez and Iheanacho. Shouldn't we be on that list?
I don't know. Personally, I think he's a bit overhyped, Joshua King. Personally. I mean, let's look at who was in front of him.
Or Iheanacho, hasn't he?
Well, I mean, is he though? Because look, let's compare to who he was up front with, competing for the first spot in the main striker's role with Bournemouth for Eddie Howe at any level that was Callum Wilson, who's a decent enough standard striker. But definitely if you'd have had a bit more flair and he'd lived up to the promise and potential that he showed in his early days, then he would. I'm sorry to Callum Wilson, who I say is a decent enough striker and probably no disrespect to him, but a Bournemouth style side is they can hold their own in the Premiership for a while, like they did, and like teams like that have done. But they're not going to. They need to show a bit more to push on to the upper echelons. And if you can't get past the goal scorer Callum Wilson, who Bournemouth fans might come up with pitchforks and say, yeah, well, he's got an England call up, and so is he. So have a lot of people that have got caps for England. That doesn't speak too much. For some of them, they've got one or two caps, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, he couldn't get in front of him, and he's probably the level we're beyond looking at. And if Joshua King's only getting on the cusp of a side and Bournemouth who are chasing promotion are willing to let him go, is it really? He's not a short-term fix, which is what you're hoping to get with the targets we've been linked with, which have been tall men. I think if you're bringing in someone that's supposed to be of his age and youth, age-wise, is Joshua King first-team material replacement for Vardy? Not in my eyes. He's not even close.
Let's ask those. Well, no, not what as a replacement for Vardy, but we've got 6
He's not a
months
short-term
here.
deal either, is he? I just don't think he'd cut it back at this level.
What do people that are watching think? I mean, here we go. Joshua King from Bournemouth again had a bit of Premier League experience. He's been agreed verbal deals with Fulham and with Everton. Vardy's getting old, and I'm not
Well,
saying that this guy.
if he doesn't choose Everton, then
going to
if
be
he doesn't choose
Vardy's
Everton,
replacement. Now, let me just finish, sorry, Brad. I'm not saying this guy is going to be Vardy's
that's fine.
replacement, but we haven't. Perez isn't. He's not scored. He's not done anything since Vardy's been injured. You've got Inacho, who couldn't score in a brothel. Be honest with you, if he'd got a woman on the bed, he'd be coming in the fridge. So surely any striker we need at the moment has got to be better than the options we've got up front.
Yeah, but they've got to be of a certain quality. And just my personal opinion, Joshua King, I don't think he'd do it in a Leicester. I think he could do it at a different club in the Premiership. I'm not, like Callum Wilson is doing with Newcastle. He's the only reason they're not as low down as what they could be without his goals. I'm not disrespecting him as a player. I just think where we are in the league and what our ambitions are, if we're going to bring in for 6 months, which is what, you're agreeing with me that he's not a replacement for Vardy, so he is going to be a 6-month option if we bring him in, to cover for him in case he does get more injuries through the season. And we're a bit concerned about it with this operation, even though it's minor, because we've all seen what happened last season when the big boys got injured and were out. If we're talking cover, I'm sorry, but I want some of Dzeka's experience that we've been linked with that I've heard. Or, someone like a Giroud. I know he's not available, but at some point there was talks he might leave Chelsea. And people have laughed them options out of the building, but are we not asking for someone to actually do something with all Brighton's crosses into the box? Has years of experience and knows how to score goals and can probably get you 7 or 8 coming off the bench. I want that over a maybe could do it, but possibly, but could then be like Perez. I don't want that. Yeah, if Fulham are going down and he decides to go there, he's literally going there to not get minutes, to get minutes, because he'll get in that team.
Or Everton, who could very well finish above us if they don't get the injuries.
But he's not going to replace Richarlison, is he? They're taking the option to have him as a Richarlison keeps getting a knock. We definitely need a backup. I don't know why Leicester aren't going in for certain players that are available. I do get your point, but I think personally, if Everton want to do that, then Ancelotti sees something that I don't, and he's a manager and he's got experience. So fair play. Maybe I'm not seeing something, but I don't think he's of that quality that we need to do a more sturdy job.
At least for the rest of this season and next season, Vardy is going to be the number one. So whoever comes in, we've said this before, both of us, is going to have to play second fiddle to Vardy, although they'd probably get FA Cup and League Cup games with Vardy doing Europa or Champions League and the league. Other players like Giroud, and we'll come on to Costa in a minute because Scott's just made the comment, and I'll bring that in a minute.
Yeah,
they're not going to come and play second fiddle to Vardy, where a Joshua King, and I know I live down here, but I don't know anything about him. But a Joshua King might come along and be happy to do that and be in the Premier League on probably a hell of a lot less wages than Nacho and Perez are. And would fulfill that role. My thinking is that he may at least be able to get some goals, which Perez and Nacho haven't been. I know great Vardy hasn't either. That was my thinking behind that.
Yeah, no, I totally get the thinking, and I'm not saying that there's not people. I mean, like I said, I could be wrong. But my memories of seeing Josh King of the thing is he just never he had his moments and he could score a goal. Yeah. Look, I agree with Chris. Someone of Costa's caliber would not want to be second fiddle. What I'm saying is the type of player who's probably differing out, remembers his golden years in the Premiership when he had a good time, and he's thinking, Cambiasso. Right, he took a chance. Yeah. It took a bit of negotiating, and his deal took ages. And we all thought he would come in for one thing and only. But when he was on the pitch, he showed he clearly wasn't. Right, he took a chance and go, you know what? They're making a case for me here. They're making a point. They're really selling Leicester to me, which is what you have to do to players to get them to come to you. You have to sell the idea to you. And he's thinking, if I'm second fiddle to Jamie Vardy, and he's still, excuse my French, next season, and Leicester still keep this train going of the momentum that they're on, and I do nick this Champions League place, and I can be a part of it, I get one more shot at Champions League. I get one more big go at it. Someone like Dzeko, if Joshua King is one of them players that wants to play first team football, he's going to sign the Fulham contract because he's not getting ahead of anyone in Fulham starting a lineup. You telling me Joshua King's getting ahead of Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison? Not a chance. He'll be there backup. And then, yeah, I'll say, okay, Ancelotti, a great coach. He could have been a backup. Maybe we missed a trick there. But if he chooses Fulham, the guy's looking for first team football. If he chooses Fulham, it's a smarter choice because he'll get more games on a personal basis for him as well. But we'll see if he signs. Well, who he signs for. That's where I stand on it.
Yeah, we've got to think of like I say, wages as well. And Facebook user made a good point there.
Yeah, of course,
wages would be high. Same with Ericsson, we proved we can't. And we have to accept that when the biggest transfer of the day is Liverpool signing somebody from Preston, that kind of sums up the transfer window as it is this year, in the fact that it is a bad one, you know. And my frustration is, and like yours, like we all are, we want the club to do well. And I just feel last year, I was watching, in fairness, I was watching Leicester Fan TV earlier, and they actually referred to him as Gordon Bennett. I thought that was actually probably quite apt. But when you think last season, all we did in January. That was a statement. Yeah. Well, all we did last season was Ryan Bennett, and we missed out on Champions League on the last day. We're looking that way again, aren't we, really? We're just slipping away a little bit. And I suppose in a normal year, we could demand more. And maybe I'm being unfair and saying, you know, are we expecting too much with the money that's around at the moment?
I think you kind of answered your own question without realising, mate. The fact that the only thing we're talking about on deadline day is a $2 million move from Preston to Liverpool. You know, I got something stuck there. That wasn't professional of me. Should have made sure that was removed. If that's all we're talking about on transfer deadline day, you know, I think that just shows that, you know, the world's in a completely different financial state. It's physically on its knees and you know, literally and figuratively on its knees in the greatest sense. And I just don't see. Oh, excuse me, I shouldn't have drank that brew too quick. It's giving me hiccups. You know, it's frustrating, and I understand it because I'm frustrated that we haven't at least got someone over. I didn't want to be talking at 10 o'clock at night, hoping to see a last Desperado thing come through, and a player coming on loan. Because I just never like it. I'd rather the business be done. I'd rather me and you have the next couple of hours go, you know, breaking down 3 or 4 transfers if we're going to do them on deadline day, then at 9, 10 o'clock. I just don't like it because we've not had too many successfuls. In fact, we're quite cursed when we try and get, you know, loanies late on in the window in both senses. I mean, I'll probably get them mixed up, but I remember a certain Nick Powell came in with Tom Lawrence. And I know Tom Lawrence actually didn't do too bad, but then he never lived up to his potential either. When he came on the scene, was quite good. But Nick Powell, his career has just gone round in circles and up and down the league since then. And you know, I think we all remember the infamous that Silva transfer. And one we can actually talk about that's left the club, Slimani, what that's turned out to become in the end, that again wasn't brilliant, was it? So I just prefer to be talking about business and not hoping on a last minute transfer, and we're just doing it for the sake of.
It's something that Emilio said exactly the same thing on the Opposition View show earlier, that, you know, you've got a whole month to do business, and excuse me, I've got your problem there. We've got a whole month to do the business. It's ridiculous that and it's probably Sky, in fairness, that have made transfer deadline days what they are. You know, purple dildos and blow up women and the lot. Just looking there, I've just put that up, and I've just put that up as a how times change. I can remember this guy being linked with a possible move to Inter Milan, and Tom Ince has just signed for Luton Town.
Yeah. Yeah. Says a lot, doesn't it? I remember that. I mean, God, it just shows you, though, just because the name alone doesn't always mean you're a success.
Yeah.
There's a few that have fallen under there. Fortunately, we've got a pretty decent former Manchester United teammate of Ince in the form of a goalkeeper. So we come out of that a bit better than he did. So I'm happy with that one. That was one of the success stories.
And there's one that might be of interest to Leicester fans going across the bottom. And again, I guess this kind of sums up the transfer window when we're actually talking about a player that's never played for us and one that hasn't played for us for over 5-6 years. But David Nugent...
Yeah, but he's a bit of a legend. He's a bit of a legend, isn't he, Nuge?
I love Nuge. I've got to be honest with you. I did love, but it does kind of sum up the transfer window. But he's joined Tranmere on a short-term deal. Let's just have a look and see what people have been saying here. Personally, I'd love to see one of the strikers from the under-23 given the chance to be better than Perez or Inacho. Well, everybody's saying George Hurst. Now, I don't know an awful lot about George Hurst, but apparently he's doing all right on loan. Maybe we should have him back. Have we not got that option to get him? Facebook Una, £400,000 by Mahrez. He was brilliant. We'll be looking. We will.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, but every club's a due of success.
Yes. We will be looking later, and I'll try this with Ltid at successes and non-successes in the January transfer window. And Rob, sorry, Rob, I hadn't seen that earlier, but yeah, get Hurst back off loan. What harm could it do? We did it with Harvey Barnes. We pulled him back, and he saved the season.
True, we did. But I know. Obviously, we've spoke about it before. Brad Hicks does the under-23s it's titled under-23s unofficial Facebook page. Go and check that out if you don't know about it already. He's currently, I think he's doing the match they're playing tonight against Blackburn. So go and check that out. He's pretty up to date with all of that. And maybe we do have the option, but I think we've seen the benefit of letting these players go out a bit. And these players are coming on the scene just like Harvey Barnes. And you've got to remember, Harvey Barnes is still young. He's early into his 20s. With these guys, they're coming up to that point where we started whispering about Barnes and we didn't really want him to go out on loan. And then he spent that time out the season after on loan with West Brom, and we called him back that way. You might see it happen next season. I think right now, purely for the experience for the head out there on the pitch. And I know George Thomas has got a crack in it, but he was brought in last year. If you're going to do it, you've got to do it at the start of the season, unless it's dire needs. And obviously, we were dire needs at that point. So, when we did say that early in the season, that back end of last season, he probably got that promotion quicker than he did, and he's taken it in leap and bounds. And that might be the case with one of these, but maybe you can call him back and give him an option. That's purely up to Brendan, but I think they'd rather make sure, because we can't send them back out afterwards, so we can't loan them out, to my knowledge, after this window closes. So if we only bring them back for a couple of games, they're sat in the bench and playing back with the under-23s when at least the lads are out there now, I believe, at championship clubs or getting proper first-team football.
And don't get me wrong. Obviously, I would never ever say I don't wish we'd won the Premier League. Of course, I never thought it was something I would ever see in my lifetime. I'm glad we did it, but we're building something now, aren't we? With Brendan, that was a one-off season, and God knows it was a brilliant season, etc., etc. But now we're building something. But because of what happened then, are we expecting to run when we're just learning to walk, if you like? Because these youngsters, if their potential is as good as they've shown, with the likes of Harvey Barnes, Luke Thomas, etc., George Hurst, the future's blue, isn't it?
It definitely is. And, I think you'd be hard pressed to, you probably could name other teams. Like, I think Burnley are one for good at bringing up their own or having a lot of youth in their side. I could be wrong. I just think some of their players sound like they've been born and bred in Burnley. I don't know if that was they've been there that long and it feels like they've never been from Burnley. But over the last 3 or 4 years, we've been building back again. And, winning creates expectations. And when we did that league, whether we liked it or not, we knew the expectations by the fans were going to be raised a little bit. And maybe them finishes down the table brought us back down to earth, and it was needed a bit. It was still solid finishes, even the worst one, which I believe was the season after, which was 14th. We finished that season, I believe, or we weren't in the top half, but we clawed that one back to a bit more respectable. Since then we've kind of rebuilt the platform and gone, all right, we got a bit carried away. We've learned from burning out, because that's exactly what happened. They burnt out after that. You could see it clear as day, and that's why, unfortunately, excuse me, Ranieri couldn't really mastermind it the second time round, and that's unfortunately, we know the events that followed that. But now we are building, and bringing up them youth is going to be a good thing for us, and give us a couple more years to build solid foundations. You'll see a lot more of our own coming through and being in that first team. Talking
as we were earlier of bad signings, it's quarter past 9, so it's time for our first guest. So we're going to bring him in and go hello to Matt. Good evening, Matt. How the devil are you, sir?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Matt.
Evening.
So you had something to do with this, didn't you? Which was Barrie Pierpoint's book, which I am working my way through at the moment, minding my own football business.
Yeah, how are you finding it? You enjoying it?
Well, I'm of a certain age where I remember most of it. Well, not all of it, because obviously there's certain things that were going on behind. Well, a lot that was going on behind the scenes. But when he talks about things like family night football and the building of the Carling stand, I remember that. It makes me feel very old.
No, a lot of time has passed since then.
But Barrie said you are the font of all knowledge on football and Leicester City.
Okay, I will try.
You can blame Barrie. You can blame Barrie. But we spoke briefly, obviously, before you came live. We were speaking on Facebook, and you know some signing or some near misses. Was it from the 2013 January transfer window?
Yeah, so I mean, looking back to some of our previous signings in January 20, I think it was 2012. We signed a young striker called Harry Kane on loan.
What happened to him?
Yeah, 2 goals in 15 appearances for Leicester. Didn't really set the world alight. 2 years later, he's a completely different player. And you look at the current striker crisis with Barrie out injured, and sort of wonder, with Kane, if we'd signed him and we'd got a Kane and a Vardy at the same time, how good could we have been then?
Yeah. Do you think we were close to signing him? I mean, he came, obviously, he'd been to a few clubs on loan, Harry Kane, hadn't he? He spent more time on loan than he had at Spurs. Do you think there was ever a possibility that he could have come?
I'm not sure. I don't know how highly rated he was at Spurs. As you say, he'd had a couple of loan spells. I think he was at Millwall and Norwich just before us, and hadn't really done a lot. I don't think a lot of people were expecting him to go on to achieve the goal scoring and set the goal scoring records that he had done since.
And good January transfer. I mean, we were saying then that it's probably one of the worst things that's ever happened to football, the January transfer window. You end up overpaying for somebody that you don't probably really want. Have we actually, made some really, really good January signings at all?
So, I mean, the transfer deadline is not the same as it used to be in the old days on teletext, if you can remember that, having to refresh the page to see who'd been signed. For me, I think the two really good signings that we've got in January, there was Robert Huth came in from Stoke on loan. Leicester was struggling in that season, looked bookies' favourites for relegation. Huth came in, and that was the start, really, of that remarkable run that kept the club up. And then just platformed into the next season, where we ended up winning the league, which was fantastic. And Huth's goal against Spurs during that season was, I mean, that was really crucial in that title run. I think he was a fantastic signing. I didn't realise either, but he'd only actually played 4 games for Stoke that season before we signed him.
Oh wow! I didn't remember that.
And then the other one for me was more recent one. 2 years ago when we signed Youri Tielemans on loan. So he was a kind of a parting gift from Puel just before he was sacked. And he came in, and what a signing he was. He fit straight into Brendan's plans. And I think the fact that we had him on loan for 6 months meant that last summer the summer of 2019, when Man United, Spurs were linked to him, he chose to come to us because he'd been here for 6 months. He knew the management team, he knew the players. So that was another big signing.
And like you say, the fact that he'd been with us, and Brad, you smiled then with Yuri Tillemans. He was one of the better January signings, wasn't he?
Yeah, he definitely was. And I know, say we've had a few gems in there and a few decent ones. You know, it was more said in jest, but I know we've just had some very comical ways of screwing up transfer deadline days as well. I mean, the most, like I said earlier, infamous silver one. It's always going to spring to minds with fans because of 14 seconds and all that went on with it. And like you said, the times have changed as well. I mean, you're talking, the thing is, people, are forgetting that just because the world's changed, the prices are still the same. This isn't like, trying to get the financial business back on. Players aren't going to suddenly be now only worth 20, 30 affordable prices, 20, 30 million, just because the world's in the way it is. They're still going to value that player what they value him at, and even more so with if they're a pivotal player. I mean, someone once to a point probably still held its prestige over it. I think in the way you could, if you wanted to sort the January transfer window, sometimes it's like it's the League Cup equivalent to the summer being more like the FA Cup, isn't it? Really, for drama.
Yeah,
definitely. And where are we here? If I just have a look at this comment here, for the short term, for the end of the season, we should have gone to Austin. He just scored for QPR. I think he's a bit of an injury liability now. I mean, I live down in Poole, and I can remember when Charlie Austin was playing for Poole Town, and I caught him for like the last half of the season before he moved to Swindon, and that's when we should have got the Charlie Austin. I think the Charlie Austin now is he'd probably spend more time on the sick table. But Matt, can you think of anybody that's been sort of probably one of our worst ever January transfer signings?
There's one that springs to mind. If you cast your mind back to December 2000, Leicester were in the top 4 in the Premier League, and Neil Lennon was a key figure in that team, and he was sold to Celtic. So we needed a good replacement. So the January transfer window came around. We signed Roberto Mancini. You think brilliant experience, but he's not a midfielder. We still need a midfielder. So Peter Taylor goes out and signs on loan Junior Lewis. Yeah. And not only that, we then paid money for him after 3 months to make him permanent. So I always think now, whatever happens in the transfer window, will it ever get that bad again?
I don't. I mean, the joke is that Junior Lewis is Peter Taylor's secret love child, because wherever Peter Taylor went, Junior Lewis followed a few months after. He made Colton Palmer look good, didn't he?
Yeah. I mean, Bennett came in last year, didn't he? And he wasn't the greatest signing, but I mean, compared to the Junior Lewis signing, Bennett was like Pele.
I think, to be honest with you, and I'll put it out to anybody that's watching, and I know we're on for a couple of hours, so people are going to be coming and going, but does anybody know of a worse January signing than Junior Lewis? I think you've got the prize straight off there, Matt. Straight in.
I might have one. I might have a few shouts for you. If I'm right, like you said, no. I think so, because I don't think too many people will remember him. If I'm right in thinking, I could be wrong. Does anyone remember? I'll cast your mind back to the dark days of Ian Holloway. And his January signings. Didn't he make some January signings? Didn't he, when he sold Lachko and Gabriel Barrie? Didn't he bring them in January? Is that correct? Or am I thinking they were brought in earlier? Was that not a January signing, one of them pair? They came as a duo, but
Do you know, Matt? I can't say whether they were January or not. I remember them, but I don't remember when.
I'm fairly certain. I remember it being pretty cold because they were all wrapped up on a match day program. That's the only reason I think it was January, and they were both brought in, and they were shocking. They were that bad. That's the only reason I remember them, because I had a season ticket through that bit as well.
Yeah,
I think
so. I think anybody that Holloway signed in January probably would give Junior Lewis a good run for his money for being that unmemorable.
I don't know about you, Matt. I remember them coming, but I don't know that they actually played. One of them, certainly, I don't think he ever actually went on the pitch for us. But I think the fact that Junior Lewis made it onto the pitch and we could see how bad he was,
wow,
probably what just edges him above.
Yeah, I'll give you that, actually. I'll give you that. But I think for so unmemorable that you can't even remember them joining the club. And they both did feature. I know Zolotko definitely featured. I think he had like number 21 or something like that, if my memory serves me correct. And he was just, they were awful. Ironically, I think he played in Champions League for Standard Liège, I think it is. Standard Liège. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Against Liverpool. And he played against them. I believe it was Champions League. It was definitely a European night. He's stuck in my memory for that. I hunted him down to see what he was doing with his career after the shambles performance at Holloway. But I'll give you Junior Lewis just for the fact that everybody at least remembers him enough.
It's a gamble, though, isn't it, Matt, when you sign a player? I mean, I grew up with Man United trying to catch Liverpool, and Liverpool were winning everything at that point. And Man United used to go out and buy players just to stop another team getting them and ruin the career. Just because a player's good at one club doesn't mean that they're going to, be brilliant for us.
Yeah, that's it. Different clubs have different systems, don't they? And the players need to adapt. I mean, there's a few who have come to us and haven't quite fit in and then gone on to be really good elsewhere. Kramaric is one who springs to mind, especially.
Kramaric, yes. And I was going to say, he falls into the sort of one that got away category, really, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's another one. I think he always looked okay when he played. He always looked like he had some potential, but I think the problem is we play the system that we play with one man up front. With one man up front, who's going to want to come in and sit on the bench? I mean, Kramaric is playing Bundesliga football week in, week out. He's playing for the national team. Is he going to want to come and sit on the bench? And that's the problem that we've got. You're only going to attract people like Iheanacho, who's quite happy to sit on the bench and be a bit part player.
Yes, yeah. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us.
A pleasure, guys.
If you haven't got this yet, go out and get a copy, or you can order it off. I think it's www.mindingmyownfootballbusiness.com. Is that right, Matt?
Yeah, it's there. It's also online at all bookshops, and when the bookshops open, Waterstones, WH Smiths, places like that, it will be available in store as well.
And for those of us that are of a certain age that remember family night football, and I'm still waiting to get to the part about the player that takes a gun into the changing room. I haven't got to that bit yet, but it made me feel very old. Matt, thanks very much for joining us. Take care, mate, and stay safe.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Cheers now. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you.
Cheers. Yeah, guys, you really need to get a copy of that book if you're of a certain age. It really is. And if you contact Barrie, now Barrie Pierpoint is a love-hate sort of figure, is a Marmite figure. You probably agree with me, Brad. A lot of people hate him because of the whole Martin O'Neill situation that came towards the end of his time, obviously, at Leicester. But we had him on the show. It was really, really nice. And I don't know whether you remember his time. You're probably too young, but he did a lot. He did a lot for the club.
I mean, I knew of him. His name rang a bell when he first came on the show, and I'm sorry I didn't know more about him. To a degree, I knew the issues. But I was at an age really where I only really focused what was going on the pitch. I knew our manager's name and what he looked like. I could pick him out. Anyway, brilliant manager. But I focused on the football at that age. I didn't really know the executive or that sort of situation like I have done since I grew up, and I've, you know, like I remember more Mandarich and just before Mandarich when we was in like Nationwide and that, but before that I wasn't really paying too much attention to it. I was just obsessed with the players on the pitch, you know, like Heskey, Lennon and that, and watching that played and anything else. So I can't really comment too much on him.
No, I mean, I didn't, but I remember the stand going up.
Yeah.
I remember the Friday night football reserve games, and it's just when you read it, you don't know about the club. That's what I'm saying. You know, you end up with an idea about somebody. Talking about signings, I mean, there's a lot of signings we probably need to make. We've got up to 6 players out for Fulham, which is a little bit worrying. So maybe we should have made some more, but we'll come back and have a look at that later, because it's time for our next guest now. Guys will know him. He joins us on the post-match show. Ex-Fox in the not in the box, but ex-Fox, Julian Watts. Hey,
hi guys, you're right.
It runs off my tongue. But
Hi,
Julian. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good. Did your daughter have a good 18th on Sunday?
We did as best as we could for her, but yeah, she had a good time. So yeah.
But the thing is, you know, she'll remind you when it's all over, and you'll have to have another one.
Absolutely, at least one more.
And that's just because you want to have the drink as well. Obviously, it's transfer deadline day today. You joined us from, I think you were Sheffield Wednesday, weren't you, before Leicester?
Yeah.
And rather than before that. As a player, how does a transfer work through? You know, what happens? Does the manager come to you and say this club's interested in you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's changed quite a lot now, Chris, to be honest. But back in the day, then David Pleat was my manager at Sheffield Wednesday, and I was in and out of the team right through the season. And I was actually out of contract, which wouldn't happen now, but obviously did then. And I was trying to get another contract, and we couldn't agree terms. And funnily enough, he pulled me 2 or 3 times during the season and let me know that Martin and John Robertson had been watching and asking questions about me. It was a bit of a strange scenario, if I'm honest. And this went right the way through until just before deadline day. And I think we had a reserve match away at West Brom, and I played quite well, and Martin was there. And I literally before I got changed in the morning at training in Sheffield, the gaffer, David, invited me up to his office and just said Martin was on the phone, want to speak to him. Spoke to Martin and said, yeah, I was interested. And it all that happened as quickly as that. I'd not really had time to consider it before then, because it had not really, there'd been no sort of firm offer on the table or firm interest, just a lot of casual inquiries. So, I spoke to Martin on the phone, said that I'd go down to Filbert Street and meet him. And when I put the phone down, David then asked me if I would still sign for Sheffield Wednesday on what I didn't think was quite a worthy contract. And, you know, I declined. And at that point in my career, I'd not really played a great amount of first team games. So, you know, I really wanted an opportunity to go somewhere else and, you know, and try and sort of make my mark in a first team somewhere. I'd had a few loan spells here and there, but nothing concrete. And I literally drove down to Leicester with my dad, went in and met Martin, spoke to Martin, and we agreed things. And it was all done really, really quickly on the day, if I'm honest.
Is he the sort of person you can't say no to?
No, he was a bit of a weird one. He's sort of not critical of any performances, but, you know, he wasn't sort of singing my praises. And I think that's just Martin's style. He always liked to keep you know, on the edge and probably not praise you too much and make you sort of try that little bit harder. So, no, but it was all amicable. I mean, I've always said that with Martin off the pitch, I always got on with him fantastically. He was a really good bloke. So, you know, that was fine. And for me, probably there's a lot of talk about agents these days, and there was then, if I'm, you know, and I could have probably done with one, to be fair, and I didn't have one at the time, so I literally represented myself. And, you know, there's a couple of times, particularly when I signed from Sheffield to Sheffield Wednesday from Rotherham, and then obviously Leicester from Sheffield Wednesday, where I think I would have really benefited having someone sat with me, because I was still a little green behind the ears.
I was about to say, it's almost like you can read my cards. I was about to say, did you have agents in them days?
They were about, but we also had the PFA. PFA is a fantastic union, but all they would do, like especially on deadline day, they would say they would come with you if possible and send a representative. But obviously on a busy day like that, and there were probably far bigger fish to fry than myself, and it was just basically then they would they would know the information of, what players were earning at the club and where you were in your career and what you'd been earning, and then sort of give you a ballpark figure to go into the club. And so you'd have a rough idea of what you should be asking for. But still, it was a bit daunting, obviously going into Martin's office alone, and whatever they tell you to ask for, it's quite difficult to sit there and ask for it sometimes. So, yeah, bit of a tough one for me, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Are you looking at this like sort of? I mean, like I said, but like me and Brad are looking at this and thinking like, are we going to sign? Do you understand when signings aren't made like now as to sort of why they're not?
I don't know. I mean, I think looking at the game at the weekend, and it's quite obvious to see what we are missing, and I'm surprised that there hasn't been more said about that and more done about that, because I think it could leave us fairly weak for the next weeks, months, whatever it is, and until Jamie's back. So yeah, I think with managers, they want the right players, and if they can't get that player, it's probably better not to go and just get anyone. But I do think we're looking very, very weak in that area.
I mean, they were just saying earlier, it just came up. Let me just see if I can find it. Here we go. Vardy, Castagna, Ndidi, Pratt, Fofana and Morgan are all injured. A little bit scary, isn't it?
It is, and we've all said before, we've dealt really well this season with the injuries, and it's made a couple of great opportunities for some to come through. But you can get to a point where you're too stretched, and that can really have a big influence on results. And I felt, at the weekend we were quite toothless, and the result obviously wasn't great, and I think that did play a part in it, if I'm honest. And you'd like to think it was going to be sorted sooner rather than later.
I mean, did you understand the logic in getting what is a championship player who from? And I know Brad said earlier that probably this was all media talk, but the rumours were we were going to get this Chumbea, is it, from Watford? Did you get the fact of bringing him in from the Championship and letting a player we've got in Chowdhury with Premier League experience, European experience, go out on loan to Newcastle?
You don't, but I mean, we don't see what goes on the training ground. We don't know what. I mean, obviously, Damari Gray's gone today, and it's probably seen that there's not. Well, they've both spoke well of each other in the club, that something's been missing there. That the manager doesn't quite see what he wants to see in him, and his game time's been next to nothing. So it's very we have to trust the manager. He's a good manager. We all say that. The way that he plays, the way that he sort of brings the players through. I mean, Harvey Barnes is doing great now at the minute. He's an ever present. So I think we all think Brendan Rodgers is the man, and I think in that we might be confused by some things that we sort of hear and see. But I suppose at the end of the day, we have to say we think he's the right man, and we have to trust him what he's doing.
I mean, Brad, Craig, and good evening to Craig. Thanks for joining us. He basically was saying what you were saying earlier. The club have targets, and if they can't get who they want, why just get anyone just for the sake of it? My worry still is deja vu to this time last year, when only bringing in a Ryan Bennett, I think, cost us the Champions League place. But Craig has the point there, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does, and I do agree with him. I mean, I think the ideal player that you'd be looking for now would be, an up-and-coming striker. But obviously, bringing someone into the club, they know they're going to be number two to Jamie when he's fit. So it's a difficult position for a striker coming in. But so you would look at someone like Liverpool who brought the centre back in, who he may get his opportunity quite early because of their injury problems, but really he's one to bring on, and he'd probably be more irregular in maybe a year's time or something like that. And I felt like someone like that would fit in perfectly with sort of what we're looking for at the moment. But yeah, it's right, because you can't really just go on and get anyone, because you just end up with squad players, and we don't really want squad players. We want people fighting for first team spots. You
would agree with that totally, Brad, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would. I mean, we spoke earlier in the show about how difficult the business has been for anybody to get done in January, let alone, as we've said, with how things are going on with the current situation in the world, it's even more difficult. And I'd put the question back. Would you rather us go out and make a Gordon Bennett? I mean, a Bennett of a signing, like, of that standard of signing, just for the sake of it, like Craig said, and you said yourself, Chris, or would you actually rather them not do any business and say, look, we've got these targets. The clubs are not budging at this time because, like I said earlier, just because the climate's gone to pot doesn't mean the prices of players' value has gone down to compensate for it, because clubs aren't going to just take it easy. Maybe we've got targets and Brendan's gone, look, we can't get the targets, the players that I want, and I'm not going to make that mistake. We're talking now, it's 20-10, and we've not even heard a whimper of anybody solid coming through the door. And I mean, the most solid thing I've heard today was about Maitland-Niles, and that was shut down by Arsenal, and then within 15 minutes West Brom was sniffing around him, and I don't know how that deal went. I assume they got him in the end, but
I think he's done
that's probably the most solid thing we had.
Yeah, I think he's done the medical in London, and he's on his way up. Unless he decides to turn right and go into Leicester rather than carry on left up to Birmingham, he's on his way to West Bromwich. I've got to do this, otherwise I will not be allowed back in the house ever again. Good evening and hello to my daughter Heather there. All right, Heather.
Hi, Heather.
Hope she's all right. She wasn't well recently, so hopefully she's going to be better. Julian, I'm not sorry, and I play devil's advocate a lot, obviously, in this position. I have to sort of, because of what it is, but I'm actually quite happy that Chowdhury isn't going anywhere.
Well, I mean, like you say, he's had his spell in the team, and I just think right now we're sort of strong there, and that's probably why he's on the fringes of it. But, he's certainly good enough to compete. And again, if he gets his opportunity, which may or may not arise, before the end of the season, he may take it. And again, it's just down to the management's preference. And, I feel like, I'm a big fan of Ndidi's. I think Tielemans' form lately has been fantastic, so it's very difficult for him to displace those guys. And he's just in that situation where now that he's not going anywhere, he needs to get his head down, work hard, and sort of claw his way back into contention for a place.
And I suppose we're looking at our position. Well, I'm looking at our position, and I said this to Brad earlier. If the biggest transfer of the day is Liverpool signing somebody from Preston, that kind of sums up how the deadline day's gone this with everything that's going on. My worry was that we end up like last year. Maybe we just miss out on Champions League again. But if we were to, and we got Europa League again, or just missed out on Europa League, it isn't still not a bad season, is it?
I don't think it is. It's we're just sort of I know there's a lot of fans sort of disappointed that when they talk about the top four, the top six, and that Leicester don't get mentioned. I think really that's just because we don't have the history like a lot of the big clubs do. But we're now going to be talked about in 10 years' time as the top four, the top six, because we're going to be there year in, year out. And I think the strength and building that they're doing is fantastic. And I think because obviously we won the league a few years ago, because we've got into the Champions League, it'd be a bit remiss of us to think that was going to happen every season. It's just not that easy. There are clubs with a lot of money, with fantastic squads, far more depth than we've got, and they're all trying to do exactly the same as we are. But what credit to the club and the way that it's been, developing the last 10, 15 years is the fact that we're in a strong position now. And we are knocking on that door season in, season out. So, yeah, it wouldn't be a disaster, and maybe it would help us, concentrate on the league a little bit more. But I think we'd all like to see if we could get into them European spots. It's great for the club and for the sport alike.
I think it's all down to if we can keep hold of Brendan, because I think he's got a plan there for us, and I think if we can keep hold of him and keep hold of the players and finishing Europa League 5th, 6th, whatever, it's going to do that. And I think this year, can't say write it off, but accept that this year it will be what it will be, and then hopefully next year, if we all get out of this COVID shit and everything, we can look at building properly. And that's probably when we need to, maybe the summer window that's coming up is going to be more important to us than this January one. Julian,
Yeah, I know. I agree with that. But I mean, I also think on this season that 3 wins in the next 3 games, and all of a sudden we'll be all saying what a great season this one is again, and that we're up there. I mean, it was just a bad result on at the weekend, and I think with the Leeds team, I think you could study them, week in, week out, and I don't think you'd still know what you were going to face at the weekend. There's such a in and out team, and they can be all over teams, or they can have a bad day at the office, just like we all can. And you never know what to expect. And on Saturday, they came out at the end and they looked quite comfortable at the end, which was disappointing. And I think it is because we are lacking in certain positions. But yeah, there hasn't been a lot of activity, and I do think the bigger clubs have all probably spent the money already and actually have big enough squads and the right players, just to continue the season and get the success that they're after. Whereas I think we might have sort of looked for maybe 1 or 2, but it's not meant to be. And like I say, the summer one will be interesting, but hopefully we can kick on, get those injuries back like we did earlier in the season, and get on another good run.
Brilliant. Julian, I will let you go. Thank you so much for joining us and giving the insight into yourself. I don't know if you'll be free on Wednesday night. It's a 6 o'clock kickoff, so the post-match show probably about 8:15. If you're free to come on that at all,
that should be fine. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. We will see you.
Because I need you on my side, Julian.
No worries. All right, guys.
Take care, mate. All the best. Thanks
Julian.
very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks to Julian. It's always good, isn't it? Sorry?
Yeah, it is. I need my teammate back on the post-match. Although Steve was brilliant on it as well, so he wasn't a bad replacement for the ex-Fox on the show. So it's a good face to have on there as well.
There was a. I'm gonna leave this with you because I'm gonna go and get our next guest in, and then we just take that banner off there. I think we've all worked out about the Southampton.
That's a good deal for Southampton. I know he's not featured much to Liverpool, but that's not a bad coup if they manage that. Yeah.
I'm going to leave this one for you to have a discussion while I go in and get our next guest in. He says famous last words. Let me just. And this is something that Craig said. There was a rumour this morning that a top 6 side were trying to do a short-term deal for Diego Costa. Would any of you taken a gamble on him? I'll leave that with you, and I will be back in a second.
I mean, Craig, I understand why. It might seem like it's worth taking a punt, and he is a hell of a character. Is one way of defining it. We all know he's got the capable experience, but I think Chris said it earlier. It's more like an Eriksen situation. It's good to see as if it could be. We could be out there. Brendan might go. You know what? He misses someone with a bit of grit. I mean, he worked with Luis Suarez, and he was a sodden half. Like to take a chunk out of his opponents. He got a bit hungry on the pitch. So having someone like that in your squad, he's got experience at handling him. He clearly handled him enough to give Liverpool that momentum in the season where they nearly won the title before last year's one. And obviously he got a bit hungry when he was in London and Chelsea, but he brought the best out of a player of that sort of mentality. Would it upset the dressing room? I think it might do that. I think he might be too much for it, because I don't know if Diego Costa I don't think he'd be one to sit on the bench. I think if you're bringing him in, you're telling Vardy that it's going to be rotated between them, and I don't think either of them's going to budge on that one. I can't imagine Vardy's going to, if they're going to butt heads for a first team place, there's only going to be one winner, because they're not just, the manager will pick Vardy all day long over Costa because he knows what he means to the club and what he's done for the club. So I see the point and I see his experience, and I think that's why I likened more towards Dzeko or Dzeko, however you pronounce his name, over Costa as my choices of another opinion for experience, because I think he could come in and do a job and wouldn't mind being second fiddle. But I do see why not. It could be a possibility. We've done stranger things.
We have, and just to that point, that was excellent timing, Brad. We're going to bring in BBC Radio Leicester's very own Owynn Palmer-Atkin. Good evening, Owynn.
Good evening, guys. How are we?
We're
I'm
very
very
good.
well,
How are you?
thanks. How are you?
Yeah, all good here. All good here. All good here. Hoping for maybe a bit more action in the next hour, 11 minutes.
I was going to say, we're falling asleep here. We're finding I thought this would be a great idea. Deadline day. Let's do the last 2.5 hours live with plenty to talk about. And we're talking about loan deals and Liverpool buying somebody from Preston. Is it been busy? I mean, it hasn't been busy, I don't suppose, for you either.
No, it hasn't, and it's a little bit different to the normal January transfer deadline days that we do, and the summer ones as well. But today has been very, very quiet indeed, and not the day really that we expected at Radio Leicester, because Brendan Rodgers, we spoke to him after the Leeds United game yesterday, and he was seemingly very, very confident. He said that we wouldn't have to wait 24 hours before we saw something, and that he was confident that there was going to be a deal being brought in for an attacking midfielder, which a couple of weeks ago he said he wanted to bring to the club. And then today in his pre-match press conference, we got a very, very different feel. And he was talking more about it might be a 50-50 chance, but he started and he mentioned it quite a few times that he's happy with the squad that he's got. So it's not been the transfer window I think us and yourselves all expected, and even Brendan Rodgers maybe.
Indeed. And I get that Arsenal, I mean, I kind of, I've got on, well, my maybe future son-in-law is an Arsenal fan, so I was asking him about Maitland-Niles. Now, I could kind of get bringing him in, but I could understand Arsenal not wanting to let him come to us, although I'm sure he could have come and not played against Arsenal. But, and I said this to Brad earlier, I didn't get the guy from Watford's link, bringing him in and letting Chowdhury leave.
Yeah, I think it was a strange one, wasn't it? Because both names in Maitland-Niles and in Nathaniel Chalobah got mentioned at the same time. And it felt strange, particularly with what Brendan had said just a couple of weeks ago about wanting an attacking player or someone who could play in the same position as Dennis Pratt. And we've seen him be used as a number 10 when Maddison hasn't been available, haven't we? So it was weird when we started getting linked with a holding midfielder, and particularly one that's playing in the Championship now, not necessarily that young mid model that Brendan would normally look for in a player. Whereas Ainsley Maitland-Niles seemed to fit the bill a little bit more, maybe, in that he is quite a versatile, pacey young player. Could play, when you think in that 4-2-3-1 that we've seen a lot this season, could play on the left, on the right, or in behind Jamie Vardy or the said striker. So was able to play across all of those as well. Is he the quality, though, that Leicester would want? Is he the quality that could push players like Harvey Barnes, Cengiz Under, I wonder?
I kind of, and we'll ask Brad what he thinks on this, because I kind of understand he wants to play in the midfield, and that's why he wants to go out on loan. And I know a couple of teams that are interested in were looking at him as a defender, but he wants to play that attacking midfield role. And if he comes in and then letting Chowdhury, who's obviously defensive midfielder, leave, I kind of get that. Would you, Brad, have gone for that move, sort of Maitland-Niles in and Chowdhury out?
I mean, it seems that way, doesn't it? I mean, given Brendan's response that I read about on the BBC website, and I believe it was through yourselves as well, Owynn, he kind of came out and said that I do know, I do know him. I do like him as a kid because he's played under him before, but he says I also know a lot of other players. So do you think maybe it was something that, because Brendan Rodgers has come out and said that if someone came in permanently for Hamza Chowdhury, who's probably been, aside from Damari Gray and Slimani, probably up there as one of the biggest talks of a player that could potentially leave this club in one fashion or another, do you maybe think that's where that sparked, because it was transfer deadline day and there hadn't been too much hype around the club itself, and apart from the Ericsson, that for me was a bit left wing of an idea, and I think only was maybe thrown in the mix because of our position. I know Leicester generally inquire about it and the wage put them off, that maybe because he had played under him and he does know him, and he was one of them talked about players from a relegated side that could have made a jump to the Premiership, and that obviously the situation in Leicester. And do you think maybe because Chowdhury was maybe still an option to leave the club and that gap would have been filled, and like you said, he's more of a holding midfielder, so maybe that was more stemmed from something like that? Or do you know, I just feel like that was more where the deal could have potentially come across, with the talk of Maitland-Niles being the original and only target that Leicester may have had in mind, without some action from the outgoings of the club.
Yeah, I think when you look at, when you mentioned Christian Eriksen, Brad, and the club, from what we believe, is that made tentative inquiries. Is this player available? How much is this player on per week? And the wages essentially were the reason why they were put off the deal initially, and it didn't really go any further than tentative inquiries, really. But on Hamza, I don't think the club were looking to sell Hamza Chowdhury in any way. I think they see him as an academy product, and Brendan said earlier today, they're not rushing to get Hamza out of the door. They just want to get him game time, essentially. So if they can get him to Newcastle and on a loan, Newcastle wanted a loan. They didn't want to buy anyone. And you know, if they could get him there and they could get him to play more games than he would get at Leicester, then long term that would be better for the football club, because they've taken an academy product, bought him through, but then they've also got him some game time in a Premier League club in a consistent run of form. I suppose if in the next hour and 5 minutes we don't see anyone signing for Leicester City, which is probably going to be the case now, it means that Leicester are going to stick with the same squad essentially that got them through to this stage of the season so far. And if they can, in one way or the other, have the same start to the season, a similar second half to what they had in the first half, then I think at the end of the season we'll all be sat here talking about how good a season it's been and an improvement on last year. And I think Hamza Chowdhury will play an important part in that. He's still going to be a player who will be called upon by Brendan Rodgers, particularly now with Wilfred Ndidi's injury, although it's not as bad as maybe it was first thought. But Wolf has a history of injuries now, doesn't he? And I'm sure Hamza will be called on at some stage of this season between now and the end of May.
I mean, somebody commented earlier, Vardy, Castagna, Ndidi, Pratt, Fofana now, and Morgan are all injured. But we had more injuries than that at the start of the season, and we were still sort of, you know, second and third and first and what have you. Should we worry?
Well, I think when as you say, you've pointed out some of the players there that are out. I think if any club in the country has those players and they're missing, then they're going to be a big miss, and that people are going to be worried, particularly with Jamie Vardy, who I think we saw in the game against Everton. That was the sort of game that Vardy would have really been effective in, and can nick you a goal, can nick you a winner in those sort of games, as he has done since he arrived at the club. But I think yesterday was more of an example of how much they miss Wilfred Ndidi, because I don't think Leeds score at least two of their goals if Wilfred Ndidi is in that side, because he just snuffs danger out before it gets to a dangerous position. And so many attacks and so many opposition attacks are broken down before they can even form to be attacks because of Wilfred Ndidi. But when you throw in the likes of Castagna, Morgan, of course, who's played a bit part role and probably going to retire at the end of the season, but Castagna as well has been such a good performer. These are players that any side in the country is going to miss. But when you look at the depth of the squad at this moment, 2 years ago, if Leicester lose that number of players, they're in a much, much worse position than they are now. They've played all season with injuries, essentially, really, to the likes of Vardy, Maddison, Ndidi, Soyuncu, Ricardo. And now they have all of these players coming back. A couple of them have got injured again, but I don't think it's as bad as it perhaps would have been. Context, I believe, is probably a little bit key here, because, you know, they do have the strength in depth, and the re-emergence of Papi Mendy is sort of backs that point up, doesn't it? Because it looked like he was going to be going in the summer and then signed a new 3-year deal, and here we are talking about how he's a very, very safe pair of hands who can come in and deputise, clearly not as well as Wilfred Ndidi, but can do it to a level.
I'm going to mute Brad in a second, because I'm going to ask you this question, and I'm sure Brad's going to swear when I ask this. But thoughts on Perez and Iheanacho up front? Should we have brought a striker in?
What, in this January transfer window?
Yeah.
It's an interesting one because clearly, and I don't think anyone would disagree with this. Clearly, Kelechi Iheanacho is not the long-term solution for a striker in behind Jamie Vardy, and has flattered to deceive. And in the way that Leicester play, neither is Ayoze Perez, because they play in a very, very different way. Perez, as we saw yesterday, dropping very, very deep and wasn't hanging on the back line of Leeds United. And that allowed their central defenders to play higher up the pitch, and therefore they became more and more aggressive as the game went on. The striker is such an interesting one, because if you can go out and buy a striker in January at the right price, what does it say about that striker? Why are they available in January? Why can you get them at a half decent price in January? Brendan said in his press conference earlier today, actually, that the striker situation will be addressed in the next few months, and they'll look to sort that in the summer. It's a difficult one. It really is, because there's three lads at the club. Vards clearly is the number one, and then you've got Kelechi Iheanacho, who can go for a really good run of form and games, and looks like the striker that Leicester paid 25 million for. And then at other times he just looks completely shot and devoid of any kind of confidence. It's a really strange situation. They need a striker. They need a long-term plan for Jamie Vardy. That is without question. But in this transfer window, was it the right time? I probably think not, based on the fact that, can you go out and get a striker that is going to be the long-term solution to this Jamie Vardy enigma that has been coming and coming and coming for the last 2-3 years, that at some point we all had to face up and go, they need to do something with this. And I think the next striker they sign will have to be that player.
Yeah, we have seem to have been screaming that for the last 2 or 3 years now, and I just hope we don't get to the position where it happens and we're like, shit, who are we going to use now? And it's like, you've known this for a few years, guys, but because Brad loves Ayoze Perez, so he'd have him up front every time, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you, Brad? Owynn, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Owynn.
We'll have to have you back on soon, and I'll let you go and have the last hour and just see if any. I'm getting that excited by Liverpool getting somebody on loan there, as you can see. That's how quiet it is.
Yeah, I'll go make myself a hot chocolate and get tucked up in bed, because I can't see anything happening, if I'm honest.
No, I don't think it is. Like they said to everybody, go home. That's not great.
Yeah.
Stay safe.
Cheers. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Cheers. That was Owynn there. Thanks a lot to Owynn, BBC Radio Leicester. Great for him to come on and have a chat. Did you agree with a lot of what he said there, Brad?
Yeah, I think he was fairly spot on. And look, we're just seeing some news there at the bottom coming through that it's a loan move as well. It's not even like it's a permanent signing. In fact, I'm going to use Liverpool as a pure example for the point he was making about Vardy. And, you have a lot of issues with replacing Vardy, because if you bring one of these lads on loan, like we've discussed, I just feel that they're not going to get the game time. And when that you want to give them, Rodgers clearly wants to give these players first team experience at the level he thinks they could shine at and do well and impress to maybe come into the mix next year, like we've been doing over the last few years. Are you going to do that for 2 games and then have him on the bench? I don't think that's the option. I think that's the reason no one's been called back from loan. I think that's the only reason they've not been called back from loan. And again, with the reason I think we've struggled to get one, and why he's saying, and he's smart on Brendan to wait till the summer, because we don't know what situation anything's going to be in financially come the summer, where the club's going to be, finances of qualification, bonuses for finishing where we do in the league, whether it's a Europa League spot or a Champions League spot. Money that comes out of being in the Europa League as well will continue, providing we get through our knockout games. The further we go in competitions, it all adds up to good revenue at the end of the season. And I know that goes on expenses and other things. I'm not saying it's a great deal, but it's going to give us more of a boost, and we also become more of appealing. Whereas right now, like you say, Jamie Vardy is difficult to replace and come in and make it appealing. Look at Liverpool. One thing, I think Liverpool are having a worse job than us, in the sense of a lot of their fans and a lot of the media are talking about they have to go out and get Virgil van Dijk replacements. I don't think someone of Klopp's, shrewd business he's done, because he's built this Liverpool team to what they are, and he's turned them into the Premier League champions, and they've won the Champions League under him. don't you think he's been doing that? You don't want to make a spectacle and make a statement and say you're going to fill a spot and not be able to pull it off. There might have been a case that something did happen out of the blue today and we did get a striker, but it wouldn't have been a spectacular name. And that's no disrespect to someone. If someone does somehow get through the door in the last hour who's a striker. And I think that's the issue you have. He's big. He's really big boots to fill. And you're trying to give a very limited role to a talent. And like I said, if there's targets out there less than one, they're better off waiting for the summer than trying to get them done in January. Because like you said, if they're available now, there's a reason. And it's the only reason I'd go with experienced players.
We haven't got a striker to come in here, but we have got a midfielder, and he did actually get 21 goals for us. So maybe he could get his boots on and come back in. For those of us of a certain age will remember this gentleman, Mr. Paul Reid. Good evening, sir.
Evening, gents. How we doing? You okay?
Not too bad,
evening,
thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing all right.
Could you get your boots back on again, Paul?
Probably. I'll give it a go, I suppose. Yeah, I do play the odd. Still try and do a little bit with the old Swansea Legends team. Obviously, because I'm based down in Swansea now. I used to play for the Leicester lot when I first moved down here, but again, it was getting a bit of a chore travelling. 3.5 hours, 4 hours on a Sunday to play a game and then come back again. But I enjoyed those days mixing back with the boys like Ali, Gary Mack, Paul Ramsey, all them people. So it was enjoyable to get back up there. I'd say I still try and play the odd game down here for the Swansea Legends team.
I can imagine. There's a lot of youngsters that have not been following us that long as that. They're going like, who? But those of us at a certain age would remember. Did you ever, as a player on transfer deadline day, and you were with Leicester about 6 seasons, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah, I started in 1984 as an apprentice and left in 92. So, like 8 years I had there really, but 6 years as a professional. But back in those days, it was different how it is now. I think the transfer deadline day was it was in March. And that was it, I think, if I can remember right. So, it was always one of those where, if you wanted to leave, then, you'd be able to leave. But, it was difficult back then because, you didn't really want to leave because you were playing football, you were playing regularly in the first team. It's one of those when you're not playing, that's when you keep an eye on the transfer deadline day, when you're not in the manager's plans.
I was going to say, did you as a player ever think, oh my God, it's the deadline's coming up, who's he going to bring in? I better put a little bit of extra effort in at training.
Yeah, it's again, when you're young like that, you don't really think about that. You just want to carry on. You just want to play football, and you don't really take much notice on who's coming in. When you get a bit more experienced, then it starts to get to you a little bit because you think, oh, he's bringing him in. What am I going to do? I'm not going to be playing. I might have to look elsewhere. So when you're younger, like I was at Leicester, it's one of the where you didn't really mind who was coming in. You were just happy that you were at a club and you were playing.
Yeah. A message here from, if I can just bring this up, from Lee. Great lad, Reedy. Neil Warnock bought him 3 times during his career.
Yeah, I wonder if that's my mate Lee Williamson. I've known Lee for years and years and years, and I think he used to look after some of the apprentices. I think there's one who's playing for the under-23s tonight, Casey McAteer. Right. So I do ask about Casey. I've met Casey a couple of times. I've been back to Leicester to watch a few games. The one that sticks in my mind was Atletico Madrid in the Champions League quarter-final. Great times, and I still keep in touch with a few people. There's only one really player who I do keep in touch with down there now is Ali. I message Ali quite often, and we do have a bit of banter and whatever. It was funny because obviously I watched the game yesterday, Leeds and Leicester. Going way back in the 80s, and some of the younger viewers probably wouldn't have seen, but you can still catch it on YouTube. I think we were 2-0 down. We ended up coming back to win 4-3. If you ever see, it's one of the Gordon Strachan scored a cheeky penalty.
Oh God, yes, yeah.
But he put it just off the spot. We complained, so all of you see just moved it back and then took it straight away. And of course, Martin Hodge then had no chance to save it. Yeah. So, but yeah, again, I did watch the game yesterday. I made a point of watching it, obviously, because I knew I was coming on. tonight with you guys.
And do you think, as a team, we've got a nice big squad now, haven't we? Can we go on and win things with this squad, or do we need to add a lot more? Is it just a case of tweaking it and the odd signing here and there?
Yeah, I think with Brad, obviously, I know Brendan from his time at Swansea. Didn't actually come into his company only once. He lived he actually lived by me, so I did speak to him briefly before he as he left Swansea and went to Liverpool. Just had a quick chat with him, wishing him all the best tomorrow. But he's very shrewd in his transfer dealings. I've just been told the gentleman what he's been saying about lacking up front. Obviously, if Jamie Vardy's not playing, then they do struggle because they haven't got really anybody to threaten him behind. Where with Jamie, you've always got that chance of him. He's going to make a run, and he's a typical, as I said, typical old centre forward. He wants to make runs. He wants to harass people. He wants to kick people, and he's a pleasure to watch. And from where he's come from, they've got some really good players. I do try and get to watch them as often as I can. But obviously, I've seen there's a couple of players going. Demarai Gray, for one. I remember when Swansea were in the Premier League and played against Leicester down at Swansea. I think Swansea won 3-0, and there was a poor Leicester team on that day. But Demarai Gray was one of the better performers. But again, lack of form, not being not fancied by the manager. He's old enough now that he needs to get away and try and get playing again and get back playing. But Leicester have got some really, really good players. I like the centre back. Is it Fofana?
Yes,
very good. But again, he's injured, so we don't know how long he's going to be out injured. But I think with Brendan, he won't just go into the transfer market to buy someone for the sake of it. Again, he'll have his scouts out, and if there's nothing going to come up by the end of tonight, then he'll wait till the summer and he'll tweak it. But they've certainly got a good enough squad and a good enough team to finish in the top 4.
Yes, and do you think that? I mean, Brad's very much, and Craig as well. A few people have said there's no point, and I suppose this is what you were getting there. There's no point in buying just for the sake of buying, but it's still, and I mentioned this a few times, it still haunts me of this time last year when we didn't buy and we just missed out. But there's not much happening, is there? And it is such a funny transfer window.
Yeah, that's right. As I say, he won't be pressured into buying anyway, Brendan. If the right player's not there, then he'll just stick with what he's got. And he'll try and get the best out of the players what he's got at the moment. I know there's a few injuries, but if they can still make, obviously the game yesterday wasn't the best performance, and he's come across and said that. So they as a football player, especially those players who are playing, they'll look to bounce back on Wednesday. They play Fulham away Wednesday, if I'm right, Lee.
Yes.
Yeah. So Fulham are a decent team, but it's a chance again, for them to go away, play with no fear. And trying to just do the best they can. I said they have got some talented players. Maddison can score a goal. Perez can score a goal. So they just got to keep going, keep performing as well as they have done previous to yesterday's game.
As a player yourself, did you go? Because I mean, it's a standard saying, and Brad will back me up on this, that following Leicester is a roller coaster ride. It's up and down, and But how can and you probably explain this to me, but you can play so well as we did against Everton, although we only got the draw, and then we can't perform against a team technically worse than Everton in Leeds. Did you used to have patches like that when you were playing as a team, not yourself personally?
Yeah, I think as a football player, you are going to have your ups and downs, and as a team, you are going to have your ups and downs. The thing is, Leeds United are a very, very outgoing, attacking team. There's times yesterday they were having 5 or 6 players in the box, and that's the way they play. That's the way Bielsa plays. He likes to play that way. So they're always going to create chances, and a lot of people probably before the season would have probably wrote Patrick Bamford off. Yep. But he's just got a lease life, and he's such a pleasant, nice boy. When you listen to his conversation, his interviews after, so yeah, teams do go through ups and downs throughout the season. You'll have a really good run. You probably have a little blip of a couple of games. Then, you know, if you are a good team and good individuals, and you know they've got a good manager behind them who will be doing everything to install that confidence back into the team again.
Mm. Paul, thanks so much for coming on. Really, it's been great having people on because we've got no signings to discuss. It's just been me and Brad here, sort of sat here arguing about Perez and Iheanacho. Would love to have you on again sometime if you fancy coming on at any time. That would be lovely.
Yeah, that'd be great. And you know, I've been watching today, and obviously I've been speaking to my mate Lee. You know, have they signed anybody? Is anyone in the pipeline? I know Maitland-Niles was mentioned, but Arsenal wouldn't want to get rid of him to a club that are going to try and get in the top 4 against. So, you know, it has been probably a difficult show for you to present with no players to talk about who they've signed.
I know this was one of those, like, when we thought about it, it seemed like a good idea, you know? But there we go. Paul, all the best to you and your family. Stay safe, mate, and we will talk soon.
Okay, then. Thanks, gents. Take care.
Thanks for coming on, Paul.
Yeah,
Thanks
good having you on, Paul. Cheers.
Bye.
Oh, I tell you what, Brad, I think we're glad we've got these people coming on. We're going to have to talk for about half an hour at the end, but that's not too bad, is it?
No, it's not bad. There's not too much to have to put up with this.
Do you because a lot of people have been saying, because of the Vardy situation, the Perez and the Iheanacho, and I did see you twitch, but should we be maybe playing Barnes up front? And just while you're answering that, I'll go and get the last guest in.
Yeah, I mean, anyone that checked out our pre-match show, go and check it out. Yeah, I think that's done extremely well for anyone that's seen the post. We've had a brilliant, fantastic response. So a quick thank you to all of you that have tuned in to watch that. And if you haven't already, and you've still got a bit of energy about you after this drab transfer window that we've tried to keep as interesting as possible for you, I did talk about Harvey Barnes in that game, that maybe we should put him up front. I think he's a great option. Brendan has tried it on occasion, and we're clearly seeing that from the people he's spoken to. He's come out and said a few months back now that he was asking Alan Shearer about some taking tips off him or the way he used to be, and Brendan's come out and always, through his progression since his time here, said he keeps improving, he keeps trying hard on the training ground, and we're seeing the effects of it now. We're seeing him add goals to his game. When he's finished yesterday, I pointed it out in the video, didn't I, Chris? I said Maddison played that ball with such a connection with Barnes that he played it to a centre forward, and he finished it like one. If you, like I said, if you go and check it out, the Leeds pre-match, post-match show video. If you go and check that out, I think I said Wolves there. That's how long this has dropped on. My head's gone. You go and check that out. You'll hear my discussion on it. But yeah, I think Harvey Barnes should go up front for the game. If like I say, we're not going to bring anyone in that position.
I mean, somebody was saying that Brendan had said that he's worried about what he might gain from putting him up there. He might lose from having Barnes on the wing. But could you not have Albrighton on that wing? He's played on that side before, hasn't he? And Under on the right, and then move Barnes up front.
Yeah, and you take into the injuries in the account that have come into it. I didn't know about Fofana's injury. I don't know the depth of it. I don't know if it's a tweak or he just pulled off.
No.
I didn't know that until that was put forward, but that's not the case there. But you talk about returning players as well, which was mentioned, by our guests through the night as well. And obviously, like I said, check it out. You'll hear it come up through that. We talk in a bit of detail about it, so I'll just glaze over it. If you say that, you put Ricardo Pereira at right back over Castagne, and you put Under on the right. Albrighton came to us on the left side as a left-sided player predominantly because he played a good chunk of his time here on the left side, so he could do a job. And you've got someone through the middle like Barnes. He knows how to put a ball in, and he can do it on the ground and not just in the air, Albright, and he can find him. We know Under's fairly decent from what we've seen of him. He's definitely got a burst of pace to keep up with him, and he's got a few assists to his name, and he's managed to get a few more since Arsenal. Since we talked about him, I don't know why not. You wouldn't lose too much on it, especially if James Justin is there on the overlap. You could tinker it, dare I say, use that old word, tinker it, change it, and see a way that maybe Justin overlaps and makes them runs to get it further up the pitch, and Albrighton maybe puts it in, and that's how it'll go. You've got to work to compensate for what's at the club and the situation of injuries, and that way you bring Ricardo back and he gets more minutes, and we get to see more of Under, which the fans are wanting to see. So I think it's a logical choice of what we've got available to us.
Well, that leads me very nicely into our final guest of the evening, which means we are going to have to talk for about half an hour afterwards, Brad, but I'm sure we'll be able to do that. For those of you that will remember this gentleman of a certain age, Mr. Barrie Pierpoint. Good evening, sir. How the devil are you?
I'm fine. Can you hear me all right?
Evening,
I can hear you fine. Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm on my mobile, unfortunately. Yes, I can hear you very well.
Good. Barrie, for those of you that of a certain age will remember, for those of us, I'm of a certain age. For those of you that are younger, Barrie was Leicester City's first chief executive, was very much behind a lot of great initiatives at the club, including the Carling stand, those that remember that at Filbert Street. And he's got a book out at the moment, and I'm nearly through it, Minding My Own Football Business. It's great. It's all about Leicester City in the 90s. And you read that, and I'm reading that, and I'm going like, oh, my God, yes. And you've made a happy man feel very old, Barrie.
Well, it's about bringing back some of the old memories of the 90s. We had some good times then. And clearly, people like to remember some of the good old days. And those days were really very successful. We did a lot in that decade. And I'm quite pleased that the book came out, and I'm quite pleased that we had about 40 people telling their stories and putting bits of information in to make it even more interesting.
It was, and it's one of those things that, as a fan, you don't know what goes on behind the scenes. So it's a great behind-the-scenes look at a football club. And it's like, I can remember family night football, but the way that it all started up and you brought that in, it's amazing to read that. At the side of it, there were great times the 90s for Leicester, weren't they?
Well, they were, considering at the beginning of the decade when I first joined, we were just about to drop down into the next division if we hadn't won that game, and we hadn't got the sort of the wind with us in that last few months there, because we would have been a league, a league further down, and we would have been in the right mess financially, because we were in a mess then when I first joined.
Yes. I can see that. Again, you don't realise how, you look at the club now, and they are these great multi-businesses with things going on 24/7. Well, not 24/7, but 7 days a week. And how Leicester wasn't run at that time before you came in and took it over, it's frightening.
Well, it was very, very poorly organised, and there wasn't much checks and balances and controls in place when I first went there, and the whole place was very amateurish, and we didn't really look after the fans very well, and we didn't look after anybody very well, and we used to take people's money and just treat them like cattle, and I really got. I came out from industry into football, and I really was surprised at what people put up with. Because if I was paying the sort of money that people were paying in those days to watch a game of football and treated quite shabbily, I wouldn't have bothered. But luckily, fans are very passionate people, and my job, I think, was to try and change the whole culture, which I did. Change the culture to look after people, give them what they want, not give them what they don't want.
I mean, I must admit, I've got to say, reading this book, I've got a lot of respect for you and what you did for the club that we all love. And I want to personally say thank you, because like I say, I didn't know how much of that was going on, and I'm finding it a really good read. But to tie it in with like today, did you have much involvement? I suppose obviously with the transfers, but when the transfers were going on, were you involved at all, or?
Not at Leicester, because the chairman of the day would work with the manager to deal with transfers. I got involved with transfers when I went to Portsmouth. When I left Leicester, I got involved heavily with transfers there and making sure that we were spending the right sort of money and making sure that we were getting value for money as well, because anybody can sign a check for a player, but you've got to make sure you've checked their health out, make sure you check that they're okay to play, make sure that they say they can do what they're going to do. And it's a big responsibility buying and selling players. You've got to make sure that when you've got no money, like when I was at Portsmouth, we hadn't got any money. You had to make sure that you spend wisely, very wisely.
And the thing that comes across in the book as well is that you did get a lot of support from the managers and the players at the time.
I went out my way to support everybody there because my job was to develop a business, and you've got to work with people to get the best out of them. And if you want respect from them, you've got to give them respect. And you have to work together. And I work with all the people there. It's a very fine balancing act when you've got a lot of people in an organization where you are actually high profile. The players were high profile, the managers are high profile, some of the staff and myself were high profile, and you have to be very careful what you do because you're in the public eye.
Even if that includes Alex Higgins having a bit of a bad night with us. If you want to know about that, guys, you've got to buy the book. But it makes I've got to be honest with you, and I've always, and I think I said this when we interviewed you before Christmas, I've never had. I just didn't take to Mark McGee, and I know managers leave clubs to come to us. He was in a job and we got him, same with Brian Little, but it's different when they actually walk out on us to leave. But you almost made me reconsider my thoughts on Mark McGee.
Well, as I said to you at the time, managers have careers. We all have careers of some description. And if you're a young manager and you want to get on, and opportunities come. I mean, I was offered 2 jobs, one at Derby and one at Coventry, but I didn't go. I decided to stay. I was going to get more money for going to build 2 new stadiums. One was a new Derby one, and one is the one at Coventry at the time. I didn't want to go because I had a job to finish off, and I wanted to build the stadium at Leicester. So I didn't go there. But, in other circumstances, I might have gone there. And managers get opportunities. They therefore decide to take them. And, not many managers stay on. They want to develop their careers by actually going to a bigger club and taking on bigger challenges. And you can't fault people for that. That's life, simple as that. Same with players. Some players' ambition is to play for, some of the international clubs, abroad. And, if they want to go and do that sort of thing, well, you can't stop them. It's about, their career, developing their careers.
I think we forget that, don't we, Brad? Really, when we sort of have a dig at Maguire, have a dig at Chilwell, these aren't Leicester people like we are. They don't support the club like we do. To them, it's a job.
No, I mean, Barry's pretty spot on. It is exactly that. They're employed by a club to do a job, and they're paid X amount a week, like any employee is at any job they do. And if a better opportunity comes along, or there's an opportunity, like you would in a workplace, if there's a promotion, call that a wage increase, at a club, then fine, they might stick around, or they might build. They might get behind the idea at the club, like Barry said. You might decide to finish a job there. Certain players see it as that they've got things, unfinished business with the club, and they want to stay. Or, we've had players that have returned. I remember Paul Dickoff said he felt he had unfinished business at Leicester, and that's why he returned as a player. You do that. Sometimes you go back to your old job. Sometimes you do that, and sometimes you don't leave your job and you stay there maybe longer than you should, and you have a bit of a bad spell. It's no different. Just because the wage scale is ridiculous and it's a sport doesn't mean it's not a, you've not got to think of your own family. And these days things have changed in how much affordability is. Like you said, if we was down in the Championship with the players we've got now, would they be turning their nose up at an extra 30k a week to go and sit on the bench or even feature as a club like Newcastle? It's a business. It's cutthroat, no matter what it is, no matter how entertaining it is to watch. If you want to take it that way.
I mean, Barrie, talk about we've lost 2 players, and we'll come on to that afterwards with Brad. But Slimani's gone, Gray's gone. Apparently, I've heard that's 130 grand a week. We are now better off. Slimani on 80 grand, and I know it's the club's decision to pay them and what have you, but you can almost understand, putting yourself in his shoes, why would he want to rush off when he's being paid 80 grand a week and not being picked to play?
Yeah, but you might rush off eventually if somebody else gives you 100 grand a week or 150 grand a week. Then, so therefore, it's about the career move. But the other side of the coin is sometimes players are moved on because they're not performing. They're almost like given the sack in the roundabout way, and they're moved on and sold off because they're not doing what the manager wants them to do. They're not worth what they're being paid, and so therefore they get shoved out. And that's the opposite side of somebody who's being wanted and is being sort of goaded to go somewhere else on more money. Sometimes players are moved on if they're not really good enough or up to the mark.
Yeah. Barrie, I'm going to thank you, and I'm going to let you go because it's getting late. Just tell everybody, where can they get hold of your book?
Well, the book's available in places like Waterstones and bookshops. It's also available online, eBay and Amazon. And I've got my own book title website as well, where you can buy it from there as well. So it's all, and even some news agents in Leicestershire have got it as well. But I would tell anybody to go and read it, because behind the scenes, people don't know what happens behind the scenes of a football club, and only people read what's in the media. And sometimes the media are very good at portraying the wrong information. So never be fooled by the media. How about that?
That is very, very, very true. I've got a lot of Leicester books, Gary Lineker, Emil Heskey, etc. But this, like I say, you do see the other side to it, and it is a really, really interesting read. Is it www.mindingmyownfootballbusiness.com? Is that your website?
That's the website where you can buy the book on there as well. You can order it on there direct. Yes.
Brilliant. I would recommend it to anybody. It is an excellent read. Barrie, we will have you on again. Thank you so much for joining us in what has been a quiet night on the transfer side and keeping us going. Take care, and love to all your family, and stay safe.
You too. God bless you all. Take care. Bye-bye now. Thank you.
Cheers now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, take care.
I tell you what, when I first had him on, Brad, he is not like you think of him at all, because he has got that reputation. Because let's face it, you didn't get on with O'Neill, everybody hated you because O'Neill is such a god to everybody. But the book, it really does. You do see the other side to it.
Yeah, and it's a side that maybe a lot of fans, like you say, you don't see it, you don't hear of it. It is very much behind closed doors, and people sometimes forget that we only see, the media brings out a different side of person, almost like I've seen a lot of discussions, and you see it a lot more in this day and age. A lot more ex-players of that, and have a bit more freedom to speak about it. Maybe back in the 90s, which obviously wasn't too many years ago. I'm making it sound like it was 50, 60 years ago that this happened. But even like probably back then, you probably had a bit more fear about coming out and saying anything. You probably didn't want to say anything or tread on toes, because then people were still in employment. You didn't want to tarnish your name, and you're still trying to make a career yourself. If you come out and say something, and then that person defends themselves and says they're talking rubbish, it flips someone's career 180, and you probably didn't do that then. Whereas now, if you're an ex-player and you're in a position like Barrie, where he's still very much connected to the club in his own way, but he's not working for the club on that scale of things. He's writing a book to tell his side of the story, and he's got a bit more wriggle room to tell a bit more of I wouldn't say an honest view, but more of a view of something that we all talk about, don't we? We all talk about scenarios where we do it as fans. We spectate our own thing and probably make mountains out of molehills with transfer talks and all that. Very good. Sort of ironic that we're doing a transfer sort of show. Well, not this one, but it's ironic we're doing a transfer show, and he does bring up the point that media do sometimes stir the pot, as they say, which they haven't been able to do too much this time.
Media and agents. Going to say hi to Shando Dave. Hi, mate. Thanks for joining us. Not an awful lot going on in the window, so come and join us on here. Let's have a look. Nobody's come in really, like I say, in this window, but I did sort of allude to it then. The fact that we are saving a bit of money at the moment, which isn't bad these days, in fairness to the owners, who I think people have been mentioning it in the chat, and I do think we probably are forgetting that their business that is funding all this is going through a hard time. What we're going to do is going to take a very quick break now, and then we're going to come back and we're going to look at a couple that have left the club, shall we say, mate? So we'll be back after this.
Yeah, that's fine, mate.
Leicester Till I Die podcasts on the Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google, Anchor, and all podcast platforms. This is Leicester Till I Die TV. Subscribe to us on YouTube.
So, like I say, nobody's come in, but two have gone out. And I thought this guy had gone out on a free, but I did actually see on the website the other day, or one of the websites, that it said undisclosed. So we may have got some money back for him. If not, yes, it's 30 million we've written off, but 80k a week we've saved in wages. It just never worked out for him, did it?
No, I mean he did at the start, didn't he? Let's not forget he wasn't unfortunately what you'd call a flash in the pan. He did actually get off to a bit of a decent start, and we maybe thought, this plan B we've been looking for has finally come about. And things happen, whatever happened, and it didn't work out in the way we was maybe hoping. And it's obviously clear as well that that I don't want to talk too much about it because everybody divides opinion, and I'm not getting an argument with anybody. It's no smoke without fire. There's got to be a reason why it's just not worked out from here, and he's just fallen out of favour with whoever's been manager. Because I think maybe there was, and this is no disrespect to the club, but maybe because of the change of manager and Ranieri, once he left, he fell down a favour. Maybe Samani felt that just because there was a new manager, the promises that were made to him when he signed were supposed to be kept, and that didn't. Maybe that didn't sit well with him, and maybe that's why. And an added thing to it. I'm only speculating. I'm not out here trying to add fuel to the fire or anything. I'm just trying to you don't like I say. As much as the media might try and make him out, a molehill, more times than not, when it's something like this, there's no smoke without fire, is what I'm basically saying.
But no, I agree with the
and
point.
It was a shame,
I was going to make the same point. Is that a manager signs a player, and then that manager not long after leaves, the new manager that comes in always makes more signings because they want to put their own stamp on the team. He was brought in by Ranieri. Within, was it 6-7 months, that manager that had brought him in, that had said, I want this player, has gone.
Yeah, yes. And the thing is as well, if you remember, when it started to decline and maybe he got completely dropped, way before Rodgers was even here, to a point with Puel and Shakespeare and that before him. Ranieri, probably maybe had a bit of, like I said, he gave him a big promise that he wouldn't be a bit tart. That's not what I was looking for. A part-time player. I won't say something else, mate. I won't say part-time and something else, and I can't remember what something else is, and I've just mangled them together, and it's come out as that. But, a part-time player, maybe he was promised with the... Because remember, he was at a record transfer fee, so I don't think there was ever an intention where Ranieri made a statement of spending that money on a player like that, and was going, by the way, you'll be sat on the bench, and you'll make 6 FA Cup appearances throughout your career. and you'll get spare time out on the pitch as and when Vardy is either injured or just having a bit of a bad run, but you won't be getting there. I think he was brought in with the purpose and intent, from what you could tell from that lineup, to play as a two up top thing. And like I said, the flash and panic worked for a bit, but once a manager changed the structure and under a new regime of management, it just fell apart for him because he couldn't. I just don't think he liked being that second fiddle. Like I said, because the promises were made and Ranieri lived up to them promises, and other managers were like, "No, sorry, you're not my cup of coffee, cup of tea, however you want to word it. I'm going to persist with Vardy and play to his strengths over Slimani." Then the day, I think, thankfully, you could say to a point for what they've done in their careers since. And I don't think it'd have been at the velocity of how Jamie Vardy's done it. Thankfully, in that sense, if that is how it is, and they've picked Vardy over Slimani over who's going to be the leader when the make or break came to it, that Vardy won that arm wrestle because of the goals he'd been provided before Slimani had turned up. It might have been a different story had they turned up at the same time.
It's been a long night, and that's probably why your words are getting mixed up. But
yeah,
I thought again, this is, you presume people are like they are, and I can remember hearing stories about Gray sat there while the team were on the pitch playing a game, texting on his mobile phone, etc., etc. He's finally gone, if you like, and I'm a little bit disappointed in the fact that he had potential, and again, something just didn't click. And I think we might look back on him, and it might be one of these, and that is, it's the one that got away. Well, that does look like Harry Redknapp, I've got to be honest with you. But he wrote a very nice piece about Leicester, and I've been critical of him, and I think a lot of people have been critical of him. But you know, the passion on his face when he scored that goal against Cardiff, and in you know, it was just after the sad passing of Vichai. I mean, you can't make that up. You could see it meant something to him, and the words that he said today on leaving, I'm kind of got a new respect for him.
Yeah, and look again, no. Maybe again, and I know it's been a spun out and probably tired phrase I've made today, but again, it's mountains out of molehills. You see that response, and it has made me think as well. Was there a fallout with Rodgers? Is it as bad as the media make out? Like you say here, when we talk things, sometimes you might make a comment or a remark to spark a reaction, not more because it's something you genuinely 100% believe, but you have to ask that question. You know, not just for its interest, but so we don't just have a boring plain show where we're going, "Oh, yeah, I agree with you, mate. Oh, yes, we did everything right." You know, we don't want that here. You've got to, you know, to doing what we're doing, we've got to make things a bit more of a debate or interest than maybe we do. You know, it would on a neutral point of view. I just think maybe I feel from that statement and the way he's worded it and the way he's gone about singing so well of this club and how fond his time has been here, I think maybe it was something that maybe the player and Rodgers sat down and went, you know, I can see you're frustrated. You know I know what you're capable of, and we've seen flashes of brilliance, and I've come out on numerous occasions over the last couple of weeks on certain posts and said, I really do. He's one of them players that I understand why he's got to go. He's not up to the level of you know, he hasn't pushed on from that potential he had, you know, and I'm not saying it's in the same league and he's going to go down the same path. I surely hope he doesn't, but I don't want him to become one of them players that you kind of talk about in years to come and go, whatever happened to Demarai Gray? I want him to go to Germany and do one. I don't think he'll be one that stuck to the nets. It might just be a case of German style. Bayer Leverkusen's manager has a way that he plays and suits someone of Gray's ability and what level he's at. I just think that when it was there, like we've seen with some players, they have great potential. And there's a reason we chucked the money at Birmingham to get him when he was 18, 19. there was a reason a lot of fans, myself included, made a big fuss about getting him on the cheap because we knew he had it in him. And I hope he does go and be a success, like the likes of recent years, like Kramrich did when they've left that club. It doesn't mean it's necessarily one that slipped through a net. It just meant maybe this wasn't the place for him to make his career. Because I'm sure at another club, had that been a club, and I don't want to say it in a disrespectful manner or on levels of where we are, but I have to say it for how Leicester have been in comparison to other clubs over the last few years. If he'd have been maybe at Southampton, I don't know, maybe a West Ham. I know they're having a good season last year, but when they were really struggling and they were trying to find a Payet when he left, he was a big shoot, a big boot to fill. Maybe if Gray had gone there, with them not having European football, with them not, I know they got like knocked out of like the qualifiers of Europe, but they didn't have much success to the name over the last God knows how many years. He might have lived up to their potential there and hit higher heights. He's just at a very competitive club right now, and it's best
annoys me a little bit, and it was somebody actually posted this up, and I'd forgotten this, to be honest with you. And I think we've sold him for $2 million, which isn't a huge loss on him, apart from obviously we paid his wages. Yeah. Not 12 months ago, we were being offered 22 million for him from Bournemouth.
Yeah, we were, and maybe there was just something. Brandon likes to, as Reid said, as Paul Reid said. I went to call him Peter then, knowing it was wrong. I went to call him that because I always think Peter Reid. I always think of the Leeds player, a manager.
Reid.
Yeah. But like he said, Brandon's got a lot of faith in the youth, and he clearly, for a fair bit of his time here, saw something in Gray where he thought if he can just get it together and he can just keep it together and he can just do it when his time's given his chance, and I give him them moments and he can get it, he can be a brilliant player. But I think maybe we've got to the point now where we're a couple of years into Brendan's tenure. He's had a fair bit of time to see it, and he's turned around to Gray and gone, I don't want to see you sat on our bench wasting your career when you've got the potential to go out there. I want to give you that fresh start, and you deserve to be playing first team football. And I don't want to give you false promises that I can't keep. So it's best for you to get you out there as quick as possible. I don't think Brendan, added bonus, we got money for him, because I don't think if he'd have gone on a free, he wouldn't like we'd be sat here going, because we didn't pay such a substantial fee for him from Birmingham, from when we got him and his age. I don't think he would have been bothered too much if he'd have gone on a free. But I think Brendan just goes, could see his frustration in not playing and knowing he probably knows deep down he can do better than what he has been doing on the pitch for a club, and he's just not going to get on the side now, especially with the players we've brought in and the way the squad's playing at the moment. And he's so far down the pecking order that I think it's just brilliant all round. The fact that the club have got some money for a fee is testament to the club, because there's no reason that Bayer Leverkusen couldn't have just waited for him to come free and taken him on a pre-contract in the summer. They could have easily done that, and Leicester managed to get something out of it. And he can hopefully restart again, and maybe, like I said, in 6 years' time, when he's coming up to 30 or in his 30s, we'll be talking about a Damari Gray that's held his own in the German leagues and gone on to have a fairly successful career. I don't think he'll ever be one that we'll truly regret, but I think it's one that Leicester fans will be happier down the line to go, well, I'm glad something came of it. I'm glad he did something with his career and didn't just sit here and take the money. And it's worked out best on both fronts, and I think that will be something we see hopefully going forward. That's how it will be seen.
I mean, players, because they move on and are successful at another club, doesn't mean excuse me again, doesn't mean had they stayed here that they would have been successful with us.
No, and we're not the only club that have had it happen. I mean, you've seen someone that we've been linked with on several occasions, and again we were linked with him briefly through January. His name crops up. Was that Forvan? And he didn't do anything at Newcastle. He was terrible at Newcastle. He completely flopped. I believe it's the same player I'm thinking of as it was the one that was at Newcastle, wasn't he? But he's gone to the French leagues, and now we're not just the only club. Obviously, there's other clubs that have been linked with him. He's very hotly reported without anything solid, admittedly, coming through. Whether there's been like Owynn said, maybe the club have made some initial contact and they've got a feeler out there, and maybe this summer coming we might see that become to fruition. A transfer rumour that hasn't gone away about him, and maybe he comes back. And if we do bring him to the Premiership, then we see a different Thorven than the one at Newcastle. And I think Newcastle fans, if you look at it from their point, if let's just talk on the hypothetical there. Let's say he comes to Leicester and does really well or decent enough to get recognised, and Newcastle fans would be going, well, he obviously needed that time in the French league to get up to that level. And maybe in 3 or 4 years' time, Demarai Gray will come back to the Premier League and he'll do well and do better and have a better time in it than he has under his tenure at Leicester, because it's time for him before it gets away from him to get them.
Another Jordan Sancho, don't they? But
yeah.
Just confirming there, West Brom have actually signed Maitland-Niles. So
it's an interesting one, that.
It is, and to be honest with you, I'm sorry. I just think after the way that West Brom treated Bilic, they didn't. I mean, I was talking to the Fulham guy earlier, just a sidetrack, and I was saying, stick with Parker or sack it, and he said no, we stick with him because he knows the squad, etc. And I just think I wouldn't be disappointed, I've got to be honest with you, to see West Brom go down this season.
Well, I mean, a lot of non-Leicester fans and even some Leicester fans, bizarrely at some point, they said the same about us when we sacked Ranieri. I know that was a different thing, and you could argue, well, can you really compare them two? But they're the same thing, You do something like that to a manager, you're always going to have people that come out and say, "Oh, well, I hope you go down." It's kind of just one of them. When it's a nice guy like Slaven Bilic, who I thought did a really good job, and I know a lot of West Ham fans that sung his praise and loved Bilic being in charge of the club. And all right, maybe in the latter few months, they it's kind of like Frank Lampard with Chelsea, in the sense that the fans kind of knew that, like any other manager, would have been sacked at this point. So he's probably got a few extra games to sort it out. But if he doesn't, I can't defend him anymore. And that's kind of what happened with Chelsea, with Lampard. It was the same thing at West Ham. West Ham fans were like, as much as we love always. It looks like it's Everton. So is it Everton or is it not? So is it a signing? It says Josh King has chosen Everton.
No, Josh King has chosen Everton. And to be honest with you, he's going
to sit on the bench. He's going to sit on the bench at Everton and hope to get hope that Richarlison gets injured. Because like I said, unless Ancelotti's seen something that his experience and knowledge would know to see that we're not seeing, being fans. I just don't see why. That's not, to me, that's a we will take it for the sake of it and hope he can come good in the Premiership if Richarlison's injured, because I don't see him getting in that side. I'm sorry.
I think the plan there is a bit like we've said with the Vardy replacement, is that if Everton get into Europe and then the next season they're going to have all the FA Cups, if they all get injured, you've got that against a club that's battling relegation, that in 6 months, well, less than 6 months' time, he might be back where he is now and no better off just at Fulham rather than rather than at Bournemouth. I've got a really important point to make here, because I don't know if anybody knows, but it is definitely is one of those moments. It's a breaking news moment. We spoke yesterday, and I was told this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Now the bid.
Haven't got round to it. Today's been a bit of a busy day.
Well,
just like Brendan with his transfers, I've not fallen. My deal's fallen through with the Razor before deadline days ended. I'm afraid.
It
will be gone.
Next time we see you, and we've seen you here still with the Jesus look. And
yeah, I know. Like I said, the deal fell through at the last minute. I negotiated with the Razor, but it didn't want to work, so it's staying. And hopefully, once it's had its physiotherapy and it's back on the training ground in 3 days or two, I'll be gone by Wednesday. But we'll see. At the latest, it'll be gone by the weekend, I'm afraid.
Well, I'm sorry. It has to be gone by Wednesday.
Well, it's 14 seconds late. Leave me alone, all right? I'll get it. The paperwork's in the chance. I could still shave it before midnight.
If we lose on Wednesday, I'm putting it down to you not shaving your beard.
Well, you don't know. By the time you see me again, it might be gone. It might not be.
Well, we shall find out post game. You know,
I'll have photo evidence if it's gone before kick-off on the Wednesday. I'll be like, look, see, before we kicked the ball, I was clean shaven. Or I'll probably keep it a stubble.
The thing is, this year, just moving back onto the serious topic of the transfer window, and I think we've done really, really well. We're 5 minutes off the window closing, and I think the fact that we're still talking here, I need a drink. You probably do as well. Is normally with these, there's sometimes there's an extension where you can sign players from the lower leagues, but that isn't in effect this time, I don't think.
No, I don't believe it. I don't believe it is. I know some leagues are already closed. I think Germany closed at 5 o'clock, I believe, and so some leagues are already out of the question. And I think it's fair to say. I think if we look at this in a different light, that Maitland Miles sounds like it was the option that Brendan was hoping to bring in, and because it seems to, I don't know the timing of the release in the news compared to when Brendan did his pre-match for Radio Leicester and the media outlets. But from what I can gather, from what I remember, I think the timing of Maitland-Niles inquiry with Leicester, and then Arsenal immediately coming out saying he's not going to go to Leicester because they're rivals, which is a backhanded compliment in a way, because we want the player, clearly, from what I can piece together, because it seems like he went from very sure, like Owynn said, to that news conveniently breaking, and then if I'm right in saying this, that news breaks, Arsenal say pretty much no straight off the bat, to then Brendan coming out for a pre-match and being asked a question and going, maybe not so much, and maybe that's where, like I say, the late spark of the Nathaniel rumour came in, and maybe because they couldn't talk Arsenal into a deal to get Maitland Miles in, which sounds like Nathan Niles in, not Miles, to get him in wasn't plausible, which, like I say, is a backland compliment in its own right, because for Arsenal, I never thought as a young kid, remembering Arsenal with a Bergkamp over Mars, etc., and Leicester were a solid mid-table side. I never thought, I'd be sat here 30 years of age, and Arsenal will now be the team looking up at us and going, well, we don't want to give you players because we're trying to catch up to you, which and like you said earlier in the show, it's a reason you'd say Arsenal probably not willing to deal with us, which has stopped the move happening, because out of all the transfers and rumours we've had on not just this show that we've talked about or been posted on social media outlets about other players, that's the one that once that was squashed or completely went cold, that Brendan's manner on the transfer thing is done with. And who knows, it'd be interesting to see if he goes to West Brom, or has gone to West Brom on loan, should I say, and he plays well, and then maybe in the summer talks of him coming to us on a permanent deal might materialise.
It has been confirmed 100% he is at West Brom. He is their player.
Yeah, I thought that.
Season.
But I mean, there's some things as well. I don't know. It's just gone from my head. It's just gone from my head. I was going to say about someone or something. I was thinking maybe Nathan Miles as well. No, I can't say his name. Maitland Niles has, because if he heard that Leicester's interest, I mean, because it's obviously a bit strange that Arsenal have come out and had to come out and say, oh, well, he's not going Leicester, or someone, or some source has claimed that Arsenal have at least come out and said, we're not keen on giving him to Leicester. With it being transfer deadline day, something that we haven't been able to talk about, a shock thing that happened is if Nathan, if I'm just going to call him Niles, forget it, Brad, stop trying to pronounce long names. Now, if he wanted to come to Leicester, if he wants to potentially see that, hope Leicester come back in from the transfer in the summer, maybe he could have at some point. Did he cross his mind to kind of go to Arsenal? Well, actually, I don't care that you see them as rivals. I'm looking, going back to what Barrie said.
As far as I understand it, he actually expressed the desire to come to Leicester because Arsenal, and he wants to move on because he wants to play. His England career is just taking off. But Arsenal.
No, breaking news. We're done.
Really?
Sorry, Chris. I took you off your point there. It's 12 o'clock.
That is the breaking news.
But go on with your point. We're talking about.
The window is officially closed. The window is officially closed, guys. That's it. No more signings. Just to finish, though, quickly on Maitland Miles, is that, as far as I understand, he expressed a desire to
I thought you say Miles now.
Maitland Niles, that he wanted to come to Leicester because we were going to play him at midfield, and that's his preferred position. Arsenal and England play him in defence. West Brom, I think, we're going to play him in defence. Southampton were looking at playing him in defence. And obviously Brendan, because he was talking about wanting a midfielder and wanting an attacking midfielder, saw him as that position. And he was sort of saying, hello, this is my preferred position. I want to go to the team that's going to offer him in my preferred position. But then obviously Arsenal have come along and went, hang on, Leicester might beat us to the to Europe. We don't want you to get we don't want you to go there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, let's just, again, go down the hypothetical lane here. Let's just say in the summer we reignite that interest on, like I say, a more permanent basis. I think maybe in a way, because we've seen it before in transfer windows, and maybe it shows something in the actions, especially if he's come out and expressed he would have preferred Leicester, if for nothing else, but for the fact that Leicester were inquiring for Niles to play in that role. As Rodgers has clearly stated, he was looking for someone to come in for Dennis Pratt, as you say. Maybe he's gone, because we've, like I said, and I know I haven't said it yet, but the thing I'm on about is, could he have not forced, he had the opportunity probably then to kind of go, well, I don't care that Leicester are rivals, and maybe try and force that move through. And maybe knowing what Brendan's like, maybe he had a chat with Brendan. We don't know how far it got. I mean, no one will know behind closed doors how far it got. But maybe he, instead of pushing it through, he's taking that option to go, well, you know what, knowing Leicester were genuinely interested, and they're going to be interested, hopefully, still in the summer, because, Brendan probably still wants to add depth to that area, because we've got a few injury niggles that happen in our squad. We've clearly seen over the last season and a bit that they pick up a few bothersome injuries. I think the term is, when it's like a week or two they're out, or 3 weeks sort of range every so often, that he would get his opportunity to shine in that position and add further depth and competition. And he probably feels, if I don't kick up too much of a force, but show that the feeling's mutual to Leicester, and I can go out to play regularly and get 16, 15 games at West Brom and do well there, that maybe I can keep them interested in looking at me and make it permanent in the summer. We don't know what goes on in a player's head through that time on loan.
We're not going to know for another February, March, April, May, June, another five and a bit months, depending how long the season goes on for. Brad,
and a lot can happen in football.
It is. It's been a long one.
Has, mate.
It's been a disappointing one. Like I said, it has now. It's been a fun one. Sorry.
Yeah, and it's been a fun one, mate. We've had some knowledgeable guests on here, and we've had some different terms of the experience, and maybe a blessing in disguise. We wouldn't be able to get so many knowledgeable and interesting people on had we been doing deals left, right, and centre. People would have.
It's definitely been one of these transfer windows.
Yeah, definitely. Let's just hope it doesn't come to, and I don't think it will personally, but let's hope it doesn't come to bite us on the backside, like you say.
No. Well, like I say, I'll do anything just to be able to play that. And this is my we've made a signing, and I'll play it anyway. But yes, we've made a signing overlay. Just if we had anything exciting to get to. Let's hope it doesn't come back and bite us on the bum. That has been my major worry from the get-go. This is so deja vu to last year. Fingers crossed. We've got another one without bringing a striker in. Who knows? Steve Collins, thanks very much for your comment, mate. He's just saying there, great show, guys. Thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed it.
Cheers,
like you said, we've had great guests. My thanks to Brad. We'll see you on Wednesday night, and I expect that it will be gone.
I'll see you Wednesday night,
and I expect definitely a case of that.
Yeah, hopefully I've got to see what's going on the radar and get used to it. Hopefully it's gone. I want it gone now because it was actually getting to that stage. And I didn't want to say at any point because I thought the pitchforks would come out of me, but it's got to that stage for me where it's getting a bit itchy now. I could use clearing it up, letting it grow out again.
I'm just not going to go down that path at all. I'm going to say good night, Brad, and thank you very much. And I'll see you in the post-match, post-Fulham match tonight.
I tried so hard past the watershed. Yeah, I'll see you Wednesday night. And thanks anybody for tuning in today and for all your comments. Yeah, see you later, guys. See ya.
So thanks to Brad. Yeah, it has been a long one. It has been 2 hours, 16 minutes, 41 seconds, 42 seconds, 43 seconds, 44. And I don't know about Brad, but I think we're all feeling a little bit this way, aren't we? Yeah, there we go. I want to say thanks to the guests that we had on this evening. We had Matthew on first, who was involved with the book with Barrie. His knowledge of the Leicester club is second to none. Of course, Julian Watts, ex-player, and he'll be back with us on Wednesday night for the post-match show. And of course, we had Owynn, Palmer-Atkin, and he was for BBC Radio Leicester. He was good enough to come on and give us a bit of an insight there with some great knowledge. Peter Reid, ex-player from 86 to 92. Thanks to Peter for coming on. And obviously at the end there, Barrie Pierpoint. And don't forget, if you haven't got his book, www.mindingmyownfootballbusiness.com. It's well worth it. A really interesting read. Guys, going to be back tomorrow night. 7 o'clock. Oh, God. A bit like, you might as well just stay here and talk to you all night. We're going to be back at 7 o'clock tomorrow, and we've got the preview show, myself, Craig, and we're going to get a new regular on the preview show. You might know him, Mr. Steve Linux. He enjoyed it so much tonight, he's going to be a regular, or whenever he can, work and family permitting, he's going to be doing the preview show with myself and Craig. So look forward to that. That's the preview show tomorrow at 7. Pre-match with Josh at about 5:20, and then post-match with Brad about 40 minutes after. I'm going to go and get my cocoa. I need my bed. I didn't sleep last night. The excitement of it all. Guys, stay safe. Take care. And I will see you tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Good night now.
Leicester Till I Die podcasts on the Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google, Anchor, and all podcast platforms.
Thanks for watching Leicester Till I Die. This is Chris saying goodbye and see you next time.